What time is it, my creatives? That's right, it's photo hacking time. And last week we discussed mastering the Photoshop brush panel, which I promised that we would be talking about the mixer brush and the other parts of the brush settings, and I'm going to explain it all to you, and we're gonna make a cool 3D brush like this. How cool is that? I bet you didn't know that Photoshop could make 3D brushes like this. And guess what? You can make all kinds of cool things. You can make 3D type. You can make a whole bunch of cool stuff with this. This is so much fun. So if you've noticed, on the left-hand side here, we have this cool banana toolbar, which I provided free in the last video, which was yesterday. Today is 9/8/2020. So yesterday was 9/7. And that video was uploaded today. Yes. So moving on from that, if you want to basically have this video and get that toolbar for free, you're going to go to youtube.com/photohacklovers, and I will put a link down in the description, and you're going to go to the playlist. If you're at the home button here, you're going to go to playlist, and it's going to be the first playlist on the left-hand side. If you click on the full playlist, you can play the entire playlist here, so you can watch all of the beginner tutorials if you haven't already. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing that you're going to need is to open your layers palette and your banana toolbar if you haven't already, and I have them situated here on the left and the right side of my window, so we can create this cool brush. All right, so the other thing that we need to do is go over here to your brush panel up at the top, and if you haven't done so already, what you're going to do is you're going to load your legacy brushes, and these are your default brushes here. I've already saved out 2B. I've called it 2B, and I've already saved out this cool brush that I've made, and this will start a new set. So we're going to be working from the basic brushes here to make it simpler, but you can really create Photoshop brushes from anything. You can create them from pictures, from objects, all kinds of cool stuff. But today we're going to focus on creating our own. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift click so I can select both of the layers here, and I'm just going to delete them. All right. And then I'm going to click this little plus sign at the bottom of the layers palette, and I'm going to click that to create a new layer. We're going to grab the circle marquise tool. All right. And we're going to shift click and drag out so that it becomes a perfect circle. It doesn't need to be really large. We just make it medium size, right about there, 222 by 222. The width and the height will show up if you haven't seen already, and you're just gonna let go. Now what this is gonna do is we're going to take a brush, just a basic brush, right here. What this is gonna do is when we're brushing, and I'll show you here in a minute, when we're brushing inside the marching ants is what I call them, because they look like marching ants, nothing will brush on the outside. So I'm going to show you that here in a second. So I'm using the left and the right bracket keys, which are above the enter key, to increase or decrease my brush size. You can also increase and decrease your brush size from the brush panel, okay? So now we're going to set the opacity down to about, I don't know, let's start out at like 34% and the flow at 12%. And you can see we're just gradually, painting that in there. Now, it's really important when we're doing this, it will not capture transparency. So anything that is not completely filled in is not going to get captured into the brush with and I guess this is only for the mixer brush because I will show you in the other brush settings, it does capture some transparency, and I'll show you that in another video. All right, so I've got my pinks here, and I'm going to just lightly do like a violet. So I'm kind of making like a 3D rainbow, and I'm going to press the left hand bracket key to just kind of like draw like a line there. Okay. And then I'm going to do blue. I'm going to do different colors this time because we want to make it different than 2B. And then we're just lightly drawing like kind of like a pastel-y look here. You know what I'm saying? And then maybe if I use white, let's see how that'll look up there. Just like a really, really light pink. Okay. And I'm just gonna blend that in a little bit more because it doesn't look blendy. I'm just painting white over it so it looks more like pastel-y. All right, when you're done, you press Control D. Now, remember when I said that the mixer brush tool won't pick up on transparency? So I'm gonna duplicate the layer there, and you can change the blend modes if you want to get like even cooler effects. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it at multiply, and then I'm going to change the fill down just a little bit, and then I'm going to merge those. I'm going to merge those two layers together. So I'm going to click merge down. All right, so now we have our brush, and then I'm just going to put it up here in the left hand corner just because we're going to be drawing here in the center. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on here. So the mixer brush comes up, and I'm going to select that brush, okay? And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to choose dry heavy load, and you want to make sure, you want to make sure that that's blank when you select that. So there's nothing in there. It's like blank. So we're selecting dry heavy load. And then we're going to press the Alt and make sure it's like, we're going to need to increase the brush size so that it's like around the circle, like all the way around. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit outside. And then press the Alt key, Option, I think on a Mac, Alt for PC, and click on it. And then if you look in the window now up here, you're going to see that you have that object as your brush, okay? Now you can paint with it. And now you have this cool 2B like 3D paintbrush. All right, so how do we save this brush? We're going to go to Window, okay? And then we're going to go to Brush Settings. And then mine's popping up on the second window. All right, so if you wanted to change the spacing, you could. You can change many things here. And I'm going to create a new layer. A new layer, and I'm going to turn this one off. And so you can see, it just creates a whole bunch of 3D balls. And you can put the spacing back, which makes it more flowy. So if you wanted more flow, this is like the difference between a stamp brush and, to create, I would say, like a seamless brush, so to speak. And that gives you some different variation there. So you can just kind of paint tubes, is what I'm trying to say. Now you can change the shape of it. You can change this is the size jitter, so it will randomize it. But for this one, it's really not going to do that. I just wanted to show you some of these settings here that you can do. One of the things that is my favorite, if you go back here, if you squish this together, it makes some kind of like weird hairy brush. And I think that's pretty cool. I don't know what you would use this for. I guess boas. You could make boas and Photoshop, like clip art. Like if you're it, or you can also, this could be like a Christmas garland. So if you made like silver ones, you could do that. And on this brush, because it's like so 3D, you can also add styles to it. So if you go to Windows Styles, and I think I have some gold shimmery ones, you can add styles to it too. That one looks pretty good. It looks really it looks more like a garland, So I mean, hey, that looks pretty cool. And then if you don't want the style in there anymore, you can just right click here and then just press clear style. All right, so I'm going to put the brush back the way it was, and you just pull it back out. And how you save a brush is you click this little, it looks like four lines here. All right, and then you just click new brush preset, and we're going to just name this 2B2. And this one will include the color, it includes all the tool settings, and the size. So if you didn't want to include that, you could just check it off, and it wouldn't include the color. It would just be like a basic black and white brush, or a black brush, or whatever. And this is the size of the brush. So it's about 300 points. I think the maximum for a brush is like 7,000 pixels. So 300 is a good size brush, I guess. And so let's move on and explore more of what this mixer panel can do, because it can do a lot. Now, with this brush selected, and the reason why I wanted to make this 3D brush is because I wanted to show you guys some things. So how I deleted everything off of my panel is I just pressed Control A, which selects everything, and then I just press delete, and that's how I do it. Or you can just delete the layer and then create a new one. All right, so what I wanted to show you guys is this. So now that we've created our brush from the mixer brush tool, now you can do some really crazy things. So we're going to go in here and we're going to select 2B. All right. So if you select a regular brush tool, nothing's going to happen. But if you select 2B, if you select the regular brush tool and then go back to 2B, okay, it's going to automatically pull up the mixer brush tool. All right. So I'm going to lower the brush size by hitting the left bracket key. And I want to show you guys something really cool. So I'm going to explain this the best way that I can. So wet equals water, okay? This controls how much paint the brush picks up from the canvas. The higher settings produces the longer paint streaks, but it also is like the control of your water. So I have this at 100%, and I have my flow down to 1%. So it's going to have less paint, and my mix is about 100%. It's going to mix whatever's in my bucket here. We'll just call this a bucket, reservoir, whatever you want to call it. Think of it like if you had a watercolor palette, this will be your watercolor palette of what you're using. This is the mixer brush tool is kind of like traditional media. The best way I can explain it, whatever, if you've ever worked in Procreate, the mixer brush tool can do everything that Procreate can, except the mixer brush tool is a little bit difficult to understand. I've seen very few tutorials on this, and it is complicated to understand how it works. But just think of wet as water, okay? That's all you have to remember. Wet is water. Load specifies the amount of paint loaded in the reservoir at low load rates, paint strokes. They will dry out more quickly. So let's just experiment. So for wet is at 100%. You can see now my 3D tube looks more like a watercolor brush. It's very soft and painty, and it's at 100%. It's mixing all the colors. I'm gonna just press Control Z, and so we can delete that. Now let's look at the load if we turn it up. So when we paint out at 100% load, it's loading more of the paint. Now what happens if we turn it down? Well, nothing is really happening because the load and the mix kind of like work together. So you see how when I turned the wet all the way down, the mix went away. So the load is at 1%. It's going to load more of what's in the mixer paint tool and kind of branch off there. So some of these don't work unless the other one is working with it, is the best way I can explain. So even though the wet is the water, it also determines how everything mixes together. So if you turn the load back up, turn the wet back up, and turn the load back down, and you put the mix to 36, you have a different effect here as well. So I'm just going to press Control A and delete everything. So what happens with the flow? Well, the flow, if you're pressing hard or soft, it's going to determine how fast things happen. Also, how much paint comes out. So if I press really hard, hold on, let me put the flow up. So if I press really hard, it's going to come out more like how it did before. And if I press really light, it's going to come out lighter. Of course, you can move the flow up and down, and then you can see it's at 100% mix. So it's going to mix 100%. But if you turn that down, it's going to mix a little bit less with the paint on the canvas, what's already there. So I'm going to turn the flow down, and you can see we have some like airbrush thing going on with the wet at 100%, the mix at 18, the flow at 1. Now these settings, unfortunately, you're just going to have to play with them to get used to them. This is probably one of the hardest tools. So I'm going to just turn the mix up a little bit. But think of it in a traditional sense as far as how this all works. You know what I mean? It's really hard to explain this this tool, the mixer brush tool, because there's so many different, aspects and scenarios that you could use it for. So I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say you're working on a facial portrait and you want to mix, the paints together on your palette. So as you can see here, it's pushing all the pixels together at once versus before when it was mixing very well. So in order to do that, you're going to have it at 100% load, 100% wet, load 1%, mix 100%, flow 100%. And you can even change here the smoothing for the stroke. So it uses higher values to reduce the shakiness, and you could just click on here and basically adjust those settings, and it will make it smoother. You see it's like smoothing it out on here, and I'm just dragging here to adjust that smooth. And then, of course, you're going to want to click on this icon here. It looks kind of like a stack of layers, but it's really not. It is for picking up the wet paint of all layers. And so this is kind of like, this would be a mixer brush. Now, if you lower the mix a little bit, it's not going to lower the mixing. You see it's still mixing pretty heavily. You're going to lower the water, and then that is going to help with the mixing. My suggestion, it takes a while to get used to this. This is a very difficult tool, and my suggestion is I would just play with it and practice with it as much as you can. And so this is a really cool effect. I'm just pressing over here. You can make some really cool art. And so this is the traditional part of Photoshop. So if you turn that off, you can still mix with these settings. It will mix all of the contents on here. It will mix it all together for you. And it's just mixing the paint together. But at this point, we're not, painting with the brush. We're just mixing because of how we have the settings. As you can see here, our 3D brush is missing. 2B's missing. So right at this point, we have made ourselves a mixer brush. If you want to save this brush as a mixer brush once you're done, you can. You just go here and click new brush preset, and you can name this Mixie. All right, and I'm gonna press Control A to select everything and then just delete it. Now I'm gonna go back to 2B, and you can test this out. So now we have 2B, and then now we have Mixie. And now Mixie is mixing. But 2B started out like really thick, and now it's thin. And you can see I'm pulling and mixing the content. And how you change this, like if you increase the water, it's going to push it more out, and not necessarily, it's going to add more water. Let's just think of it like if you add water to acrylic, how it's going to interact and behave. Think traditional. Okay? So let's just say you up the mix and lower the load. And now you're going to have more of a mixing technique here. And it's also going to look like brush strokey like, because it is like tapering off with the paint. And I'm going to lower the flow. And if you lower the flow and you have 100% wet, it's going to have more of a watercolor blending effect, as you can see. And this is really good for like blending faces and stuff like that. If you're into that, you can make some really cool mixer brushes from this. It almost looks like watercolory. And then to save this brush, you can just go here and then just new brush preset, and then soft Mixie. And you can just create brushes like this all freaking day. And it's amazing. So these two settings up here, these two weird brushes at the very top for the mixer brush, this is load the paint and clean the paint. Load and clean. So if you turn this on, it's gonna load the paint, but if you turn it off, it's gonna make it like a smeary brush. So when you turn it off, you can see that there is no color here, and that's what makes it a smeary brush. Okay. So when you turn it back on, it's going to load whatever object here. You can click on here and you can load a color if you want. And it is not painting right now because we don't have the proper settings here. So to paint with just the color, you're going to turn down the mix. Okay, so you're painting and then it's drawing purple. But if you turn the mix up, it's going to mix in with the other colors on your palette. Okay, and the flow, if you turn that down, nothing is happening. That's controlling how much is going to happen, how hard you press, what happens on the canvas. So the flow is equal to how hard or soft things are going to come out of your brush. And then the load is how much your paint is loaded in the reservoir. Like, it's going to run out a little bit more quickly. So it's going to dry out. So think of it as like when you're like brushing with a dry brush. You really can't see it that well here. And of course, you're going to turn mix down so you can see what I mean. It kind of trails off, the best way I can explain it. And then, of course, if you turn the wet down, you're going to see this. I'm going to press Control A and delete so you can see. So it trails off. You see what I mean? The paint runs out. So that is what load does. It's how much paint is going to be on your brush. So, of course, if you turn this up, it's going to have more paint. It's going to run out. So if you're trying to create some kind of like tapery brush effect, that's how you would make it. I'm hoping I'm explaining this well. Now let's work on the clean part. Okay, so let me clean off the board so I can explain, clean the paint. So for cleaning the paint, we're going to click here and we'll just pick a color. Let's just pick blue. And if we have this selected, as you can see, nothing is happening because we are working on a white background. And basically what it will do is it will kind of, wouldn't say erase, but the best way I can describe it is I'm going to just start painting some paint here, and then I'm gonna click that on and turn that off, and we are going to change some of the settings here. So if you have to change it to custom and then click on this right here, clean the brush. Make sure it's on 100% wet, 100% load, 100% flow. And then what you've already painted here, if you look, it's kind of like making a clean brush effect. So let's just say that you were painting like a brush stroke. As you go further out, it's cleaning the paint off the brush. This could also be some type of mixer brush tool. Sorry about that. That's my Twitter. And you can, basically that's what it is. So if you turned off the wet, it wouldn't do anything. So you need this to be water for it to clean the brush and kind of like give it that effect, is the best way I can explain it. So if you change the flow all the way down, it would just push out lightly like colors, like lighter colors from the mixer brush tool, if that makes sense. So the more flow, the more of the color is going to come out and just basically clean the brush, and you can kind of like mix it together with everything. You can turn this on. This is sample all layers, which will mix the white and the blue together, but you can turn it off. But I will tell you that this brush doesn't work as well if you don't have like more than one color. It's really meant for that. And then you're blending the colors. You can make some really cool ombre effects like this. And or if you're just blending skin together, this is how you can blend in Photoshop. And that's really, really cool. I hope I'm explaining this right. I mean, the mixer brush tool is just so complicated to explain because it is very complex. But I hope that this tutorial helped. I hope that you get a better understanding of the mixer brush tool, and let me know in the comments below if there's something that you need help explaining or whatnot. And I will try to help you the best that I can. Remember, this tool takes practice. Even me, I still get choked up on this tool. It is very complex. It's a little bit difficult because some of the settings don't mean what they say. And I hope to next week, when I make the video, to get into some of these different mixes here. Because this video is already 30 minutes. I don't want it to be like a whole hour long. So I've given you the basics of the mixer tool to get started. And I hope that helps. In the next video, we're going to go over all of the brush settings. And I'm talking about like all of these cool settings. And we're going to create some custom brushes. So I hope you liked this tutorial. And if you liked it, please give it a huge thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching, guys.